Picture an animal standing half-submerged in a river at dusk. To most observers, it looks almost comical. Round, slow, heavy, even lazy. Its eyes barely rise above the waterline. Its movements seem unhurried, indifferent. You might even laugh at it. You might assume it was harmless. But that assumption could cost you your life. The hippopotamus is, in reality, one of the most dangerous land animals on Earth. It can outrun a human on land. It can crush bone with jaws that open nearly 150 degrees. It is fiercely territorial, unpredictable, and responsible for more human fatalities in Africa than many predators we instinctively fear. The illusion of softness hides a reality of immense power. And that, more than anything, is the point. Because most people live their lives exactly like that misconception, misjudged, mislabeled, and worst of all, self-misunderstood. They accept the surface story. They accept what they appear to be. They accept what others assume about them. And in doing so, they never discover what they actually are capable of becoming. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche once challenged us with a deceptively simple idea: become who you are. But he did not mean that you should find some hidden pre-existing self, as if your true identity was buried like treasure waiting to be uncovered. No, he meant something far more demanding. He believed you must carve yourself. He compared the human psyche to hard stone, not something soft and easily shaped, but something resistant, something that requires force, friction, and repeated blows. To become who you are is not an act of discovery. It is an act of creation. It is sculpture. And sculpture is violent. It requires breaking pieces off. It requires rejecting what doesn't belong. It requires destroying earlier versions of what you thought you were. Think about that hippopotamus again. What if it believed the same story humans tell about it? What if it accepted the label of lazy, slow, harmless? What if it never expressed its true nature? Its speed, its aggression, its dominance? It would not survive. And yet humans do this constantly. We inherit identities from family, from culture, from childhood, from fear. We say, I'm just not that kind of a person. Or, this is who I've always been, as if identity were fixed, as if it were a given. But Nietzsche would argue every time you say that, you are choosing comfort over creation. You are leaving the sculpture unfinished. This idea finds an echo in existentialist philosophy, especially in the work of Jean-Paul Sartre, who famously said that existence precedes essence. In simpler terms, you are not born with a defined purpose. You are not a finished thing. You are not a noun. You are a verb. You are something that is constantly becoming. Every action you take, every choice you make, every risk you avoid or embrace, these are the chisel strikes shaping your identity. There is no final version of you waiting somewhere in the future. There is only the ongoing process of becoming. And here's where most people hesitate, because becoming is uncomfortable. Becoming requires uncertainty. Becoming means you cannot rely on a fixed definition of yourself. It means you must accept responsibility for who you are, not as a passive state, but as an active construction. The hippopotamus does not question whether it should be powerful. It simply is, because it acts in accordance with its nature. Humans, however, hesitate at the edge of their own potential. They second guess, they overthink, they shrink themselves to fit expectations. They choose safety over transformation. But there is another layer to this philosophy, one that is even more difficult to accept. Nietzsche called it amor fati, the love of fate. Not tolerance, not acceptance, love. It is the idea that to become your highest self, you must embrace everything that has happened to you. Not just the victories, but the failures, the mistakes, the pain, the embarrassment, the moments you wish you could erase. Why? Because those moments are not interruptions in your story. They are the story. The hippopotamus is dangerous, not despite its environment, but because of it. It has evolved within the pressures of its world. Its aggression, its strength, its territorial nature, these are not flaws. They are adaptations. In the same way, your struggles are not detours from your path. They are the path. Every hardship you faced has shaped the raw material of who you are. To reject those experiences is to reject the very tools you need to build yourself. Amor fati asks you to say not "this shouldn't have happened," but "this was necessary." Not "I wish it were different," but "this is exactly what I needed to become who I am becoming," and this is not easy. In fact, it is one of the hardest perspectives to adopt. But it is also one of the most freeing. Because once you stop resisting your past, you can finally use it. And this brings us to one of the most subtle but powerful ideas, the narrative self. Who you are is not just what you do. It is the story you tell yourself about what you do. Two people can live the same experience and emerge with completely different identities, not because the events were different, but because the interpretations were. One says, "I failed, so I'm not capable." Another says, "I failed, so I'm learning." One says, "I've always been this way." Another says, "I've been this way so far." The difference is not circumstance. It is narrative. The world sees the hippopotamus and tells a story. Slow, fat, lazy. Reality tells a different story. Powerful, fast, lethal. The animal itself does not care which story you believe, but you should care deeply about the story you believe about yourself, because that story becomes your identity, and your identity shapes your actions, and your actions shape your life. So what does it actually mean, in practical terms, to become your ideal self? It means questioning every assumption you have about who you are. It means recognizing that your current identity is not a fact. It is a construction. It means being willing to break that construction apart. It means acting even when you don't yet feel like the person you were trying to become. It means embracing your past, not as a limitation, but as raw material. And it means rewriting your narrative deliberately, consciously, relentlessly. You are not the surface impression. You are not the label. You are not the version of yourself that is easiest to explain. You are the force beneath the surface. You are the potential that has not yet been fully expressed. You are, in a very real sense, far more like the hippopotamus than you might think. Underestimated, misunderstood, and capable of far more than appearances suggest. The tragedy is not that people are weak. The tragedy is that people believe they are weak. The tragedy is not that people lack potential. The tragedy is that they accept a story that hides it. So the question is not, who am I? The question is, who am I willing to become? And perhaps more importantly, what am I willing to destroy in order to become it? Because the stone will not shape itself. The river will not carve you without resistance. And the deeper truth, the one most people avoid, is this: becoming who you are is not about comfort. It is about confrontation. It is about looking at the version of yourself you've accepted and deciding it is not enough. Just like the hippopotamus, the truth of what you are may not be obvious at first glance, but it is there, waiting, not to be discovered, but to be made. Before you go, do me a favor. If this video gave you something useful, something to think about, or you just found it entertaining, tap like, subscribe, and ring that bell so we can keep this going. Every click helps this channel grow, and I'm grateful that you've watched.